when we have an emotion, whether it is fear or joy, whether we have aspects of reward or punishment, we have processes that have been established by evolution long ago in animals that are far simpler than we are, and that are aimed at giving rapid answers to problems that face an organism. When you have an emotion, when you have the emotion fear, for example, you allow the organism that has it, and by the way, this can go all the way down to invertebrates, you allow the organism to respond even without you thinking, and even in organisms that can't think. So you can see the beauty of evolution giving emotions to creatures, because that would be a way of saving them. That would be a way of allowing them to stay away from a threat or endorse an opportunity. A threat, for example, from a predator or from some kind of environmental danger, opportunities that largely come in the form of food and sex. So the emotions guide an organism, even if it does not think, into behavior that is conducive to the betterment of the organism and the survival of the organism. But let's make this clear.
Too dark to see anything.
Survival of the organism. But let's make this clear, we are emoting all the time. There is no such thing as a mind without emotion. We have a mind with images flowing, all those interesting things, pictures of the world or sounds of the world. And we also have, in response to every one of those images, some kind of emotion and some kind of feeling that comes on the heels of that emotion. So we are not necessarily thinking machines. We are feeling machines that think. Now, when we acquire this great beauty of our minds with the profusion of images that we generate in the cerebral cortex, we can then combine them with the images that are being generated out of emotions, in which I call feelings of emotion. And it is this complexity that allows us to not just respond with stock answers, which are the emotional answers, you could call them the animal responses, but also with ways in which we use reasoning, we use use knowledge, we use logic, and that allows us to construct responses that are different from the emotional ones. So if you come and provoke me and you hit me, instead of my responding by shooting a gun at you, I might decide to argue with you. And we have that shift that occurs, especially in human beings, when they have the possibility of not resolving everything by deploying an emotion. They have the possibility of thinking with emotions and in parallel to emotions, and in fact even control emotional responses. The anger response and the fear response being quite typical, and also a variety of other responses, like for example the responses we have to sexual desire or to food desires. We don't necessarily do everything that we would like to do. We have a way of curbing those appetites and enthusiasms, and that's the richness that reached. But let's be very attentive to this. The fact that we are capable of thinking, reasoning, and having this incredible construction at the very high level of the mind does not mean that we have forgotten about emotions. The emotions are still here, and the feelings are still here, and they are accompanying everything we do. So we have the best of both worlds. We have the emotional world that animals have, with their guidance, sort of autopilot guidance systems, which are very convenient. And then we have this other layer of complexity that we have put on top of it, which comes out of our rich minds in a society with lots of interactions with other creatures, and in which knowledge and logic and reasoning allow us to modify the responses of emotions or create responses that are entirely new. So, for example, the big change from coercive power to the power of reason is one of the major changes in cultures, which of course is expressed in lesser violence, which is quite dominant today. We realize that there's much less The world is pretty bad as it is, but it's much better than it used to be. And that is a result of this continued accrual of knowledge and reasoning that goes against certain basic emotional responses. Feeling of an emotion is a process that is distinct from having the emotion in the first place. So in order to understand what is an emotion, what is a feeling, we need to understand what is an emotion. And an emotion is the execution of a very complex program of actions. Some actions that are actually movements, like movement that you can do, change your face, for example, in fear, or movements that are internal, that happen in your heart or in your gut, and movements that are actually not muscular movements, but rather releases of molecules, say, for example, in the endocrine system into the bloodstream. But it's movement and action. an emotion consists of a very well orchestrated set of alterations in the body that has as a general purpose making life more survivable by taking care of a danger or taking care of an opportunity, either or something in between. The emotions were placed there in evolution as incredibly smart devices that, rather than having you think through the problem, would deliver a solution and make sure that you would act right. It's in a way a contribution to a sort of autopilot that we've inherited through all these millions of years of evolution. So if there is an opportunity, the emotion is going to make sure that you, at some level, know that it's there and that you're going to have the tendency to act on it. And if there is a threat, you're going to be alerted to it. And even before you're alerted to the threat as such, you're going to be placed in circumstances that are likely to make you either freeze or run away from the danger. Okay? So this is a level of response to the world that is automated. It's largely non-conscious. I mean, it happens non-conscious. Then you take consciousness of it, because once it's happening, once you start feeling what is happening and connecting the feeling to what you're perceiving, then you realize, haha, there's the danger, or haha, here's the next lunch. Well, you see, emotion, very often when you think about how you react to the world, something is happening to you. You're simply going along and you're being confronted by different things, not necessarily very important or significant for your ultimate life, but you are constantly reacting to the world. You're thinking about the world and you're acting on the world. And emotions are engaged when the stakes outside of your organism are fairly high in positive or negative directions. And this, of course, comes from ancient times in biology, when you were constantly being subject to potential threats and to potential opportunities. The threats were obvious, for example, predation, or inclement weather, or physical environments where you would be like having a precipice. or a hole.
X in your head.